Today's video is sponsored by Pro Cycling Manager 2022. A few days ago, I invaded the French border, delivering myself to Lille. There, I decided to infiltrate the Cyanide Studios offices to talk to one of their developers of Pro Cycling Manager, Clément Pinget. We spoke about Pro Cycling Manager, the team behind the game as well, and also about the features of the new 2022 edition. Anyway, here's our full conversation. How long have you been a part of the Pro Cycling Manager team, and what's your role in the team?
Long story, I'm working for Cyanide since 20 years, so it's long, and I'm a game designer for Pro Cycling Manager, so working on all the game mechanics.
How many people are actually involved in the creation of this game? Because from the outside, from my perspective or the player's perspective, we don't know that.
We have two main developers, one for career things and one for 3D races. Then we have also a lot of other developers which are working both on Pro Cycling Manager and Tour de France. So we have several artists, one UX artist, one for 3D. We have level designers, and we have also the lead project. So it's a small team if you compare to other big games like Football Manager. We are nowhere close to them for that. Yes.
When it comes to like the team of Pro Cycling Manager versus the team of Tour de France, how is there, like, how many people are the overlap between those teams? And for example, are you also a part of the Tour de France team or solely Pro Cycling Manager?
No, me only on Pro Cycling Manager, even if we share things with the game designer of Tour de France. But there are people working for 3D race gameplay, working for both projects. So it's 50-50, and sometimes we do share the same code. The artists are also working for both projects, and it's the same for level designers. So we try to have as many as possible people working for both projects, and only a small part of the team is working only for Tour de France or Pro Cycling Manager.
When it comes to the importance of Pro Cycling Manager for a studio like Cyanide Studios, I know you just said you worked on this for 20 years now. How important is this game in the DNA of the company?
I think it's very important because at the beginning I remember each year at the end of the project it was more like will we continue and make a new game, and a few days or weeks after it was yes, and now it's more like we are always thinking one or two versions ahead. So it's very important. Patrick, the PDG of Cyanide, is also a cyclist himself, and is passionate of these sports too. So it's very important for the company, yes.
I understand. When it comes to, you spoke earlier about Football Manager as a comparison, for example, when it comes to like the size of Pro Cycling Manager team versus the size of Football Manager team. If we look at that, do you think that the community sometimes expects you to be as developing as a Football Manager, which has a lot more budget?
Yes, I think so, but it's important. It's normal, I would say. Myself as a player, I would ask the same as Football Manager, and players do not know or they do not care if it's a small or a big team, but yes, they expect a lot, and it's normal because it's a huge sport. There are a lot of different parts in the game. Cycling is so deep. There are different kind of riders. Teams are riding everywhere in the world at the same time. There are training things, equipments, there are injuries. It's a very, very big world, and I would say maybe bigger than football, because when you see a football stadium, it's quite close. With Pro Cycling Manager, you can race everywhere. You have the open roads, open world, so it's really, really big. And as a game, it's a big challenge, yes, to do it. Of course, we have now a lot of experience of tools, so 1 year to another we can continue. But if we had to start from scratch, it would be very big, yes.
Pro Cycling Manager 2022, in terms of the development process of the game, I wanted to ask, well, what does that development process look like? What are the steps from like start to finish? When are the ideas coming up? When is decided which ideas are going to get into the game, and what comes after that?
We release the game in June at this moment, and all the summer it's more like working on updates, looking also taking holidays. So it's more the start. We already start to think about what will be in the next game, and by the end of August we have the first big features, and we can start the real development.
And from that point on, as the development happens and so forth, and at what point in the year does that become a feature that is relatively complete, that is tested in? Do you have internal testing before beta testing, or how does that work?
Yes, we have QA testing internal, and we start to this year we had an alpha version quite early. It's around Christmas. Basically, around Christmas we have already 1 or 2 big features, and then we can make a first round of small tests.
When it comes to how you decide the features for the new game and so forth, we know that Pro Cycling Manager has multiple game modes: career mode, pro cyclist mode, one-off race if you consider that a separate game mode technically, multiplayer, track. We've got a few fanatics when it comes to the track in the community, but how is decided every year what game mode the focus is going to be on? Or is that something that is a pre-planned thing of like, or every few years we're going to do that, every few years we're going to do that?
A few years ago it was more like you said, so it was a 1 year career, 1 year pro cyclist, or something like that. But now, since 2 years, it's more like we are trying to focus mainly on career, because it drives all the game. Even pro cyclists rely a lot of career, and we want to make things more robust, and we are working more on career. Also a lot of race, 3D race with the gameplay, because it's quite it's not the same pace, the same people, developers working on that. And for the other game modes, it's more complicated, because a few years ago we saw that having too many game modes is quite hard to maintain for the future, because every time you change a single feature in the game, there are strong chances that there will be side effect problems on other parts of the game. So the more game modes you have, the more problems you have. Yeah. So we try to focus more on career and short-term pro cyclist, also very important.
The focus this year for me, when I see what is on the table when it comes to features, seems to be career mode quite a bit with scouting and so forth. When creating the scouting feature, what were the most important steps taken into account of like, oh, this is something we need to introduce, this is something we need to add? What were the most important things or the most important parts of that scouting feature?
Actually, there were several points very important when we revamped the feature. We wanted more active scouting, because I feel it was quite difficult for the player to give choice, to have an impact on that. So it was the first, the base. Then we wanted more variety with riders. New generated riders was very important. We have 6 times more riders in the database created each year. Mm-hmm. We wanted also to have more precise feedbacks, because before in the old systems you had potential between 3 and 5, and it was not very nice for the players. So now we have several level of discovery, and each time you have more information, feedbacks, and I feel it's a really better system than before.
If I, for example, I'm a Belgian man, I'm interested in Belgian cobblestone riders, and I wanted to ask, is it, for example, more likely that I find a cobbler in Belgium than in Spain, for example?
Yes, of course, it's driven by the database, so good news for modders. They can change that, and obviously in Belgium you have more cobble riders, more riders for the flats, for some classics, and in Spain you will find more climbers, punchers, and we have that in the database. So I think it's quite realistic, and it was an important part.
For example, Belgium is a pretty big cycling country. Eritrea's coming up with Binyam Girmay now winning in the Giro, for example. Is there an evolution during the career mode with the amount of riders that come from regions? For example, at the start, Belgium might have more riders that are being scouted or more scouting reports from that country. But what happens if, for example, a rider from Eritrea does really good?
The parameters evolves during the game, and you have basically two parameters: training structures that are more for potential and quality of the riders from a country, and you have the cycling popularity, which is more for the number of riders you have in a territory, in a country. So let's say Bini Girmay win a big classic, the Eritrea may evolve directly with cycling popularity, and then you will have more riders coming up from this country the year after, and you have feedbacks in the user interface and also little news which say it, so it's quite nice, I think.
You spoke about the fact that we've now got 6 times more riders or something being scoutable or generated every year. But I wanted to ask, what happens with the junior riders that don't get signed? Do they get taken into an alleyway and get rid of, or do they stay into the database and are signable for the rest of the career?
No, some stays in the database, and like I would say in real life, you have the school obligations. Some riders stop their career early, even if they are very good riders. I saw that a lot of time in real life, and yes, we have that too in the game, and some young riders stop their career to have a balance every year in the game, yes.
When it comes to that same junior scouting system, in the past it was mainly that you were looking for U23 riders for people that were in that category, but now in this year it's the junior riders that we are scouting. And first of all, what was the thought process behind choosing to change it to the junior riders?
The junior riders are, for some, directly stepping up to World Tour races, World Tour teams, World Tour races, and under 23 riders are really good riders now. I mean, Pogacar, riders like Remco Evenepoel. So it was important to focus on the juniors because it was, I think, more realistic.
Can I sign in for the U23 team first, or is it directly for the World Tour team?
You can do both, actually. In fact, you can give him a contract for your normal team, I would say, directly, or you can wait the end of the season. In fact, we have a small gameplay. The transfer for U23 team is quite different from the normal transfer. It's like a draft. So each turn, first turn, you can re-sign your U23 riders for this development team, and then you can sign other riders for your team, and you can choose 3 riders per turn, and other teams choose also 3 riders, and you have a small wait, and you have the result right after.
I noticed changes surrounding the average and potential. You mentioned it already. I think that average was from 50 to 85 or something in the database before, and now well, potential was also from 1 to 8.
Yes.
Now we've got a 6-star system or a 6 bullet point system.
Yes.
For both of them. Average and evaluation is what I saw on the screenshots now. I wanted to ask, related to that, are those two tied together? For example, let's say I've got a rider and he's 3 current evaluation and he's got 5 potential. Is he going to reach that 5 potential, or is there a chance that he fails completely?
No, most of the time he will succeed to reach that potential. It was very important for us to have something more coherent between potential evaluation, because except the players who knew really good the game, it was not the same scale, so it was difficult to understand, and I think it's really better to have the same scale for both potential and evaluation. And in the future, our idea is to try to make things a bit more simple with all the attributes and the value, because it's quite sometimes we have the feedbacks why between 50 and 85 for the value, and it's an historical thing, and I think it's better in the future we will try to make something more simple. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a small thing, the changing to that 6-star system, but me as a player, it's huge for me, because that's, as a content creator, even when I try to explain things to people and I talk about potential, it was difficult trying to explain how potential worked in the previous games. And now that it's on the screen as that 6-star system instead of a number being 3 to 5, or it didn't really say what the maximum was, so it was kind of guessing what the maximum was. I like that it changed. I definitely won't be complaining about that.
And moreover, you have also the potential for typewriters now, which are viewable in the page of the cyclist, and you can get them with a scouting system if you scout discover him enough, and so you have a same scale for everything, and I think it's really better, yes, to talk about that to other players.
And when it comes to the scouting itself, you've got countries with a discovery level from the scout.
Yes.
And next to that, you've got the discovery level of the rider itself. About the rider itself, I wanted to ask, what are the steps of, like, what is the first thing you get to know about a rider, or is it random?
So the first thing you get, the first level, is the identity of the riders with basic information. Then you get some attributes, but it's random. You can have a set of this and this attributes, or different attributes, and then you have the potential, approximate potential, and more precise potential, and then you can have also a potential in all the different type riders, like classics, tours, time trials, things like that. Yes.
When it comes to the scouting pool of riders, there were also mentioned that generated riders are now made to be more versatile. It was something like that on the Steam description page.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yes, it's very important thing, because last year we can see in real cycling a lot of riders, versatile riders like Mathieu van der Poel, and for us it was really important. The old system was quite simple. You had one type rider, and then you have a random for the limits, and there were no links between the limits, and now the system is different. You have one type rider at the base, and you have chance to get other good type riders for the new gens, and thus you can have very versatile riders, or single side riders, and from the feedbacks we had in the beta, it was really good. Of course, we made some adjustments, and it's quite a cool thing, I think, for PCM 22, yes.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting to see the type of the rider that is now shown on the page, with like multiple types of the rider. Yes. Because I think in the past it was more like, oh, you're a puncher? Okay, you can't be anything else. So it's good to see that a rider can be more things, because in real life it's also like that.
Yes, and you have quite chances. I mean, if you are a climber, you can have more chance to a multiple with a tour rider. But if you are a climber, you have a few chances, but it could happen to have a second type rider like classics, cobbled classics. I mean, it's quite rare, but it's very rare, but you can have it also, and I feel it's quite fun and more realistic than before, yes.
Okay, so there's a rare possibility that I find the new Wout van Aert and versatility in my scouting
sure.
pool. Perfect.
You will find it.
We've spoken a lot about the scouting so far. I want to talk about something different next to that, a feature that was also on the feature list, more generic and dynamic opponents. Now, I've been a part of the Pro Cycling Manager community for a while, and every year there's at least one bullet point on the feature list that is talking about AI. But I want to ask, like, what was the focus of this year's changes in terms of AI?
The focus on AI was clearly all the break race things, the classics, and to make races more open with attacks from further from the finish than before. Yeah. And we had also a lot of feedbacks from players in the breakaways when you have riders not taking their turns, and I don't pretend it's perfect now, but I think it's really better on that because we tried to reproduce a lot of different problems with collaboration, and now it's really better. For instance, you have a leader from which attack, let's say on a Paris-Roubaix, far from the finish, 60 kilometers to go, and he come back to the main breakaway from the start of the race, and sometimes you had he didn't want to collaborate or things like that, and now all those cases are more realistic, and it's really a nice difference, I think.
It's been a while since I've won Paris-Roubaix, and it's always because when I attacked, I ended up in a group that didn't want to collaborate with me, and when someone else goes, I was the one that had to chase it. So I was like the guy in the group that was like, okay, well, I guess I have to do all the work now, and then I'm gonna lose on the finish line. But so that's also part of the stuff that changed.
Yes, very important, and we have a lot of feedback from players saying, hey, the high hay works against the player. That's not true. We have nothing in the code against the player, but it's true that there were a lot of cases where they didn't collaborate, and often the hay itself will not go in a weird situation, but the player, he always tries a lot of things, so he's feeling hay is working against him. But on Paris-Roubaix and all the classics, we did a lot of work for that, and I think it will be very good, yes.
The changes when it comes to stamina and resistance, those two rider attributes.
Yes, we revamped that because we were not really happy, and even for us it was difficult to explain exactly what they did, because it was on some parts it has this effect or those effect, and now it's more attributes, so stamina, resistance and recovery are what we call the engine attributes. So it's important for big races to have a big value on that. Stamina, it's more for tempo to higher efforts, like climbing a long mountain, like doing a long breakaway, a 40-kilometer breakaway solo at the end, or for Paris-Roubaix too, because cobbles and our rides more quite more slow than big bergs in Ronde van Vlaanderen, say. So it's more for tempo to high efforts, and I would say resistance is more for very punchy efforts or attacks, and it's those two values are not important for short race or easy races, because the more you use your energy, the more your green bar will decrease, and thus the more fatigue you will have. So a rider which has a good endurance, stamina or resistance, it will be better under fatigue. So he will be able to reproduce the same watts at the end of the race that at the beginning. And so it's basically, if you want to win big races, classics, long mountain stage at the end of a Grand Tour, you need good attributes in boss value and even in recovery for stage race, obviously.
Yeah, so if I understand it right, stamina or endurance, well, whatever you call it, it's more the longer efforts and the other one is more the punchy efforts. I want to ask, does that then resemble to the bars? So for example, the yellow bar, I always saw the yellow bar as the longer efforts, while the red bar was the punchy efforts.
That's it, yes.
Those stats affect those bars?
Yes, totally. In fact, the stamina endurance will affect the yellow, the max of the bar, max. So now player will show a yellow bar, which is more big, full at the beginning of the race, and the more efforts the rider will do, and the less stamina he will have, and the more the maximum of the bar will decrease. And the same for the red bar, it's with resistance. So the more attacks you do, the more problems you will get at the end. If you spend your energy, you waste it.
But next to these features that we spoke about already, there's also, for example, the cyclist page that was changed visually. When making visual changes to the game, how is decided whether the UX, the user experience, is good? Does that go to a testing phase or something?
Yes, first we check the feedbacks from the community for the cyclist page or for the new page for objectives. Clearly we had a lot of feedbacks, so it helped us setting up the first mock-up. Then we implement the first mock-up done by the UX designer, and we test it. I will say we keep 80 to 90% of the first mock-up. It depends, and we make change based on feedbacks. For instance, for the page of the cyclist page, in the beta there were some concerns about the display of potentials, and we changed totally it based from the feedbacks.
Okay, it's great that you listen to the community, so I can't complain about that. You spoke about the objective screen being changed. I think that wasn't on the initial list of features and so forth, but I want to ask surrounding it. What does that entail? I mean, it's rider objectives or team objectives?
It's rider's objective, yes. It's a total revamp of the first page, the overview pages. Last year you were not able to make a change in this page, so you had to go into each rider, and for hardcore gamers, I mean like you were deleting all the objectives, each rider by each rider, and then adding the objectives. And now we have a full page where you can do multiple selections. You can multiple select the races on the left of the screens, and you can multiple selection from the rider. So you can say, okay, I put Paris-Nice and the Tour de France for this and this rider, or I delete directly all your objectives with one button, and I copy the objectives from another rider. Now I think it's really
faster.
Yes, way faster.
I remember that every single time I started a season in my career mode, I spend about 9 hours doing my planning. So I'm very glad that there's a bit more user experience features in it. So bettering the experience, bettering the speed at which people can do certain things. I really like those kind of features, because sometimes when talking about things that people want added to the game, there's always this feeling that some people want very huge things, but I think a lot of players like myself also want the smaller things. Is that something you notice when seeing the feedback of the community that they also want those small, tiny things that change a lot?
Yes, few years ago, I would say we had no time or not many time for that, and now and this year especially, we took a lot of time for that. Myself, I did a lot of research on Discord, and also asked a lot the players, and we took a lot of time. I remember few months ago, you made feedback on objectives on Twitter thread, and I took it and I said, okay, this point, and this point are clearly quite easy to do, and we will do them. Of course, we cannot do everything, but I think it will be noticed by player because we made a lot. I can't count them, dozen of little things that enhance the overall game. We also took one thing very maybe discrete but important, the simulation times. So we made a lot of optimizations from the test we did between PCM 21 and 22. It was like dividing by 2 or more the simulation time, so you can advance better your game, and it's an important thing for most career and pro cyclist players, I would say.
Let's talk about modding. It's in my heart. I've been a modder for this game in the past, and I've let that set behind me for a bit. In previous years, there were some years where, for example, stages had to be re-exported with the stage editor, or our graphic files have different formats. Is there a change between 2021 and 2022 that modders need to be aware of that could give them extra work, or something they need to keep in mind when they release a mod?
Actually, quite no big change for that. No
Great.
re-exports, no change in the graphical things. Myself, I discuss now a lot with some guys from WorldDB or Barna, guys like that, and I exchange with them things we did last year, and we didn't do that before. We test also the database after the release of the game, the mods, and sometimes we check things and understand what's not right with this database. It's time consuming, but I think it's important, and we discuss a lot with guys from WorldDB especially. Yes.
I want to hereby give you a formal apology, because I think 2.5 years ago, when it comes to Pro Cycling Manager, when I was still on the WorldDB team, we released an update, and I think Cyanide got a lot of backlash because our update was broken.
Yes, I remember that.
Was it chaos in the office that day, or?
No, it was okay. We are, in fact, we are quite cool at Cyanide. We do not use arms or things like that.
Me as a modder in the past, it was also always difficult to balance the performances of cyclists. So for example, let's say Romain Bardet does average the entire season but has one race where he's really good. How important is that one race compared to the rest of the season?
It's hard to say. I think this race is, if it's a Tour de France or Giro, it's very important, and to be honest, what we would like in the future is things like regularity, attributes, or other attributes that characterize the riders better. It's not something for this year, but I think it's the future. For short term, we want to go in this way. Yes.
Yeah, we talk about things that could happen in the future for Pro Cycling Manager. One of the things I like and would love to see in the future is, for example, next to the attributes, also like character traits. A rider in my team that starts insulting all the other riders and the morale goes down and stuff like that, like character traits of each cyclist that influence the rest of the morale and so forth. That's something I would like. But when asking to the community what they wanted me to ask you today, they asked me a lot of questions. And quite a few of them was, when will this be implemented, or when will that be implemented? And I think I've got a fun exercise for you here.
Oh, great.
I would like you to rate the following things I will mention
Yes.
from 0 to 10 in not likely to very likely as to how likely they are to be added to the game in the future. For example, a release for Mac, I get that comment a lot, and definitely from the
Sure.
cycling community, because cyclists often ask me, "Oh, I want to play Pro Cycling Manager, but I've only got a Mac," and I'm like, "Okay, well, this is going to be a difficult process. This is the checklist of how to install Windows on your MacBook." That's a very difficult process. But what is the difficulty of a Mac release for a game? Because it's not just a copy paste, no?
Yes, in fact, if we began at the beginning with a direct Mac version, I think it would be very easy.
Yeah.
But we started to have a lot more and more code and more complicated pipelines, and I would say it's very, very time-consuming, difficult for us to have a Mac version. So I would give 3. Between 2 and 3 on 10 for this one.
If I had to like guess, I know as a developer how much time it would take to kind of rebuild the entirety of Pro Cycling Manager in a programming language that fits on a Mac.
Yes.
But so that the community understands, how many like additions of budget would you need to make that happen, you think? Or
I would say 2 to 3 years. Yes, maybe.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Also, you have hidden costs like QA. You have more tests. If you multiply the platforms, the game modes, it's complicated for everything, in fact, behind, yes.
And which developers are more expensive, the Windows ones or the Mac ones?
I don't know myself. I would say the Mac, because Mac is more expensive.
When it comes to, I'll just do it quick fire now.
Yes.
Cyclocross.
I love cyclocross myself, but I would say 4.
Okay. Is it because it's too niche?
No, I would say because it's very different. Cyclocross is more about physics than energy. I would say it's a great sport. And now with Mathieu van der Poel, Wout van Aert, it's more and more important. Thomas Pidcock too. So I would say 4 to 5.
Yeah, when it comes to the next one then, women's cycling.
I would say 8. I'm a big defender of women's cycling, and the problem actually is more if we do that, I think we have to first make the game more robust, better in the architecture, all the pipelines. We are working on it since 2 years, I would say, and the day we will be happy and have very good feedback from the players, we will, I think, we'll be able to go with the women's cycling, which will add also interesting things, because you have different dynamic of the races, and now, I mean, 4 years ago, it was difficult to follow the races. There were a different calendar, and now, and it will not go back now. The calendar is more and more important. The level is higher and higher, and yes, it would be a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think, let's say, better graphics. Do you see that as something that will be focused upon in the coming years, or?
Yes, definitely, because our engine is quite old, and it's something you have to upgrade. So I would say 9 to 10, not next year, but for the short future, yes.
And I think I want to throw a last one at you.
Yes, you're a troller of engine.
You already know what's coming, eh? I wanted to ask you about, well, let's say in my Aolo Pro Cycling Manager series, ended up doing the Tour de France, and I ended up riding that with Alejandro Ropero, my Spanish talent. And I came into the last mountain stage, 7,000 altitude meters, crazy stuff. And my rider couldn't make it on the final climb. What if I want him to make it on the final climb? Is there any way that you were like, oh, let's put in the back door of the game, some kind of like doping system or something, or not on the table?
No, zero on tennis, sure.
I can understand. I can understand. I think that's basically it for today. I don't have the box of PCM with me yet. It's arriving here at the offices in a few days, apparently. So I'm looking forward to that. But when it comes to Pro Cycling Manager, the game is about to release on June 9th. That's in a bit of time. Calendar is not my best thing. But I'm going to look behind the camera, looking at one of the community managers at Nacon, and I want to ask him, it's 10 a.m. in the morning roughly, or roughly, okay. It's apparently 10 a.m. in the morning, so that's the time that it usually goes. Don't forget to release a stage editor. But yeah, that's basically it. When it comes to Tour de France games, it's going to be available on PC and console once again. Also on June 9th, I'm also looking forward to playing that. I'm mainly going to focus on Pro Cycling Manager on the channel, and once again, thank you, Clément.
Thank you, Benji.